Wali Dâd was a very simple-hearted man. He lived in a mud hut far outside his village, and he was a grass cutter. Every morning he got up, took his rusty scythe to where he knew the long wild grasses grew, and he would cut them and make a big bundle and put them over his shoulder, and then he would walk into town and sell them, his grass, as animal fodder. He got 30 paces for that. He would spend 10 of them for food, he would spend 10 on anything else he needed, and he would put the other 10 in the big pot under his bed. He was a happy man. He knew where he was going and what he was doing, until one night he threw those 10 paces into the pot under the bed, and they came back. And so, curiously, he pulled that pot out. It was full to overflowing, and he said, "Oh my, I'm really a rich man. What will a man like me ever do with all this money? Oh, I can't stand this." And he worried all night. And then he thought of a solution. The next morning, he poured all those paces into a bag and took them into his friend, the jeweler. "Now take this bag of money and give me a gold bracelet, the best you can, in place of it." "Of course," said the jeweler, and he gave him a gorgeous gold bracelet, very intricately made and with jewels. It was gorgeous. Wali Dâd took that down the street to his friend, the merchant, who had big caravans running around the country. "Friend," he said, "who do you think is the noblest woman in the world?" "Why, that's easy," he said. "It's the young queen of Kaistan. Her palace is 3 days to the east, and I often stop in there when I'm on caravan." "Would you mind," said Wali Dâd, "taking her this gold bracelet?" Quite amused and wondering how he ever got it, the merchant said, "Surely I'll do that for you." And he did. He gave the bracelet to the queen, and she said, "This is lovely. I don't know any Wali Dâd, but he deserves a present in return." And she sent back a camel loaded with silks. Well, when the merchant got to Wali Dâd's hut, he said, "Oh, what will I ever do with a gift like this? I don't want it at all." And laughing, the merchant said, "Why don't you just give them away?" "Oh, well, who is the noblest man that you know?" "The young king of Nekabad, 3 days to the west." "Well, take some of these silks for yourself and take them to him as a gift from Wali." And he sent him 12 horses, his best. When the merchant got to Wali Dâd's hut, he said, "Oh, take 2 for yourself and take them to the queen." And laughing again, the merchant did. And the queen said, "Why am I getting gifts from Wali Dâd?" Well, her prime minister said, "I don't know, but you ought to send him back a gift so big that he won't send anything more." And so she sent him 10 mules loaded with silver. And of course, you know what happened. When Wali Dâd saw that, he gave 2 to the merchant and said, "Take the rest to the king of Nekabad." And that king said, "What is wrong with this man? I don't even know him." And his prime minister said, "He's trying to outdo you. You just have to send him something that is so grand, he'll give up." And so that's why that king sent 10 camels with gold ankle bracelets, 10 horses with gold bridles and stirrups, and 10 elephants with gold seats on their back, and 10 men to take care of them. Well, the merchant by this time was getting very apprehensive. Where is this all going to lead? But when he got back to Wali Dâd, who told him, well, just take 2 of each and give them to the queen, well, how could he resist? That was a pile of income. And so he did. And when he reached the queen, she said, I don't know why I'm getting all these riches. And her prime minister said, you know, I think Wali Dâd wants to marry you. And that's why he's doing it. And perhaps it's time that you went to meet him to see what you think. He's certainly rich. Right. And so she got a caravan together and forced the very reluctant merchant to lead them to Wali Dâd. Well, they were on the road 3 days, and then they stopped overnight, and she sent the merchant ahead to warn Wali Dâd of their coming. Can you imagine that? Well, Wali Dâd said, I don't know what to do. I brought shame to me, to you, my dear friend, and to my town. What can I do? And the merchant said, I don't think we can do anything. The queen and her caravan will be here tomorrow. Well, the next morning, Wali Dâd got up very early. He snuck out of his hut with a knapsack on his back, and he took off down the road. He was leaving, and all of a sudden, 2 radiant ladies appeared before him, and they both said, Wali Dâd, where are you going? Oh, he said, I am so ashamed. I cannot stay. And the one radiant being, they call them Peris there, we would call them fairies. She said, Wali Dâd, you're dressed in rags, but in your heart you are a king. And so she touched him, and his old clothes turned into beautiful silks. With a jeweled turban on his head, his rusty scythe became a scimitar. And she said, turn, go home, all will be well. He turned, and his hut had turned into a palace. He walked up the steps of the palace, and there were servants running to and fro, getting ready for his visitors. He walked bemused from room to room. They were all dressed. All these rooms were so richly outfitted. He was overwhelmed. And then all of a sudden, 3 servants rushed in. The first one said, Master, there is a caravan from the east. And the second one said, no, no, the caravan is from the west. And the third one said, there are 2 caravans, one from the east and one from the west. Wali Dâd went out and stood on his steps, and there to the east was a beautiful queen in a litter, being carried by servants, and off to his right, a handsome king mounted on a beautiful horse. He went down and went to the woman. He said, you must be the Queen of Khaistan. Welcome. She said, you're Wali Dâd? And he said, yes. And she said, who is that handsome king over there? And he said, that's the young king of Nekabad. I'd like to introduce you. And he did. And this being a fairy tale, they fell instantly in love. Great was the rejoicing. And after 3 days, they were married. And they even had their honeymoon in Wali Dâd's castle. Finally, all the company was gone. The next morning, Wali Dâd snuck out of the back room of that castle, walking up the road to run away. And those two Perrys appeared again and said, Wali Dâd, where are you going? And he said, I should be grateful, but say no more. We know what you think, and all will be well. And the one Perry touched him, he was back in his old clothes. She said, go home. And he turned, and sure enough, the palace had been replaced by his wonderful mud hut. And life started in again. Every morning he got up, he went into where the tall grasses grow, he cut a big bundle, he took it into town. Everything was as it should be, and he lived many years. He thought often of his friends, the king and the queen. But I'm here to tell you that he was never, ever again tempted to send them a gift.